The PENTALFA or esoteric pentagram. If we analyze the pentalfa deeply, we can see at the top angle of 4. This is the symbol of Jupiter, the father of the gods, the symbol of the divine spirit of every creature that comes into the world, the symbol of the eternal living God. Below that 4, you will see some eyes, always open. These are the eyes of the divinity, of God. Before this symbol of Jupiter, with the eyes of the spirit always open, the columns of angels and demons tremble. Such a symbol frightens, horrifies, the dark forces. The pentalfa opens its arms in an extraordinary way, like a man standing with his arms and legs spread. But if we carefully observe those open arms of the pentalfa, we will see the sign of Mars, the planet of war, and we know that Martian occultism is terrible. In the lower, not higher, spheres of Mars, we find terrible black magicians who tremble before this terrible sign of the pentalfa. Obviously, this Martian sign, placed on the arms of the 5-pointed star, which is man, gives us strength, not physical strength, which is a much lower form of strength. No, it gives us the strength of the spirit to overcome the wicked. The 2 lower open angles, which are the legs of each one of us, when we stand with our legs apart, carry the signature of Saturn, and we already know what the negative aspect of Saturn's sphere is, what the terrible black magic is. Obviously, the dark forces understand it if this sign is placed on the legs, downward. If above we have Jupiter with the eyes of the spirit always open, it is clear that the dark forces, seeing this, are horrified, they cannot resist, and retreat. To the right, when placing the image face to face, we see the moon, and to the left we see the sun. But if we place the image, not facing us but on our side, it is clear that the sun will be on the right, and the moon on the left. The sun is represented by a circle with a point in the center. This radiant sun of the spirit illuminates our path. On the left is the moon. The sun represents the solar forces, the positive, masculine forces. The moon represents the negative, feminine forces. In the center appears the caduceus of Mercury, under the sign, precisely, of Mercury. This caduceus of Mercury is very important, and above it is the symbol of the planet Mercury. It is obvious that Mercury is the messenger of the gods, the planet closest to the sun, the minister of the sun. Without Mercury, it would be impossible to achieve the intimate self-realization of the being. Below Mercury, precisely, appears the caduceus, with the wings of the spirit always open. This caduceus is located on the spine of man, in our spinal cord, in the pair of sympathetic cords known in the East as Ida and Pingala, a pair of cords that twist in the shape you see in the caduceus of Mercury. Through these 2 nerve cords, the creative energy rises to the brain. Now, let us expand further, after this brief explanation. Here, we also have, in this pentalfa, the staff of the patriarchs, the rod of Aaron, the bamboo cane, with 7 knots, the scepter of kings, the rod of Joseph, blooming, which is the spine. Obviously, the sacred fire must rise through the spinal canal to the brain, to then move from there to the heart temple. Also appearing in the pentalfa is the flaming sword, which is nothing more than the sacred fire in each of us. Without the flaming sword, we would not be true disciples. When an angel loses its sword, that angel has fallen, and then is cast into the atomic hells. Also appearing in the pentalfa, at the top, is the chalice. So, we see the chalice, the staff, and the sword. This chalice undoubtedly represents the yoni, that is, the womb, just as the staff represents the phallus, the masculine principle, and the sword represents the sacred fire. Undoubtedly, we must learn to handle the staff and the sword, and we must also work with the vessel of Hermes, if we wish to accomplish the great work. The word tetragrammaton is quite interesting. Tetra is the unity within the unity of life. Tetragrammaton is exactly the 4. Because the Father is the number 1, the Son is the 2, the Holy Spirit is the 3, but they, the 3, emanate from Ein Sof, that is, from the inner star that has always smiled upon us, and the 3, emanating from Ein Sof, form the 4, the tetragrammaton. This word, tetragrammaton, is mantric. I once wanted to experiment with the tetragrammaton. I vocalized it in the higher worlds of cosmic consciousness, and then many ineffable beings, from the 9 heavens, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, emerged to see what would happen, as if saying, "Why have you pronounced the name of the Eternal in vain?" I was struck dumb, feeling perplexed and confused. If we place the pentagram in this way, with the upper angle down and the 2 lower angles up, we have the symbol of black magic. Instead of the columns of angels responding to our invocations, the columns of demons would arrive. When an initiate falls, when they spill the vessel of Hermes Trismegistus, they are then struck by the Arcanum 16 of the Kabbalah, falling with their head down and their legs up, in the form of the inverted pentalfa. This is how great initiates have fallen. If we paint the symbol of the pentalfa with charcoal at the entrance of our room, with the upper angle facing inward and the 2 lower rays facing outward, the dark forces will flee from our room. But if we painted it with the upper angle facing outward and the 2 lower rays inward, the dark forces would come into our room. When the pentagram is placed on glass, for example, in a painting, it terrifies the wicked. And if it is painted on glass, it also causes them to flee in fear. If it is worn on the chest, in gold or silver, we will be well protected from the forces of darkness. The pentagram is truly of astonishing magical power. We see, in the arms, several Hebrew letters. Ayad he Vau he appears. The word ayad, as the masculine principle, or divine particle, more precisely as a virginal spark, is terrible. Ayad, the masculine divine principle, he, the feminine divine principle, Vau, the masculine sexual principle, the lingam, he, the feminine yoni. There is a specific pronunciation of the Hebrew letters Ayad he Vau he, but it is terribly divine, and these mantras must not be sung in vain because these 4 letters make the inner divinity vibrate. It is said to be the name of the Eternal, and they should never be pronounced in vain. This invites us to reflect. Other Hebrew letters appear there, to remind us of certain processes of divinity, but I will remain silent on them for now. Numbers appear, as reminders of the Trinity within the unity, the tetragrammaton, but it is not mandatory for those numbers to be present. These are perfectly conventional. What is important is that the tetragrammaton is present, which we now know to be the Trinity within the unity of life, the Holy Four. Undoubtedly, my dear brothers, the pentagram is the human being, the microcosm, within which, as I have told you, the infinite resides. We must work with that caduceus of Mercury that appears in the pentalfa, meaning we must transmute the sperm into energy, to awaken the sacred fire and make it rise through the spine to the brain. Only then will it be possible to develop all our faculties and powers. We must work with the caduceus of Mercury that we have in our spine. Obviously, when we know how to transmute sperm into energy, when we do not make the mistake of spilling the vessel of Hermes Trismegistus, the sperm, not ejaculated, transforms into seminal energy. This energy, in turn, bipolarizes into solar and lunar atoms of very high voltage that ascend through 2 nerve cords that spiral up the spine, the 2 cords that appear in the caduceus of Mercury. These solar and lunar atoms make contact at the tribeni, near the coccyx, and then, by induction, a third force awakens. I am emphatically referring to the sacred fire of the spine, the Pentecostal fire, the Jehovistic fire, the sexual fire. This fire, slowly ascending, vertebra by vertebra, awakens different powers in the man. We must work, undoubtedly, with the sun and the moon, the masculine and feminine principles, meaning the man with his woman, and the woman with the man. Only in this way is it possible to awaken that sacred fire which will radically transform us. We must learn to handle the staff and the sword, we must learn to handle the vessel of Hermes, the sacred cup. Only then is total transformation possible. In my previous talk, I mentioned that when a man marries a woman who does not belong to him as a wife but takes her capriciously, violating the law, it is easy to recognize her because, on the day of the wedding, she appears bald. Unconsciously, she comes to cover her hair in such a way that it cannot really be seen. She appears as if she has no hair, bald. Naturally, not all women know this. If they did, they would find a way to avoid appearing bald, to let their hair grow everywhere. It is said that the man is marked with a fatal star on his forehead, that is, with the inverted pentalfa, with the Luciferian fire. When a man is also unfaithful to his wife, to the wife who has given him the great law, he falls, like the inverted pentalfa, with his head down and his 2 legs up, and he will carry on his forehead the fatal symbol of the inverted star. In the Middle Ages, there existed the great esoteric Gnostic mysteries. A neophyte, who was a candidate for initiation, was led with his eyes blindfolded into a great hall. There, the blindfold was removed. The first thing that appeared before his eyes was the Baphomet of Mendes, the devil. The neophyte was ordered to kiss the devil's behind. If the neophyte trembled and did not obey, the blindfold was put back on, and he was led out through another door. He never knew through which door he had entered or left. But if he obeyed, from the very legs of the devil, from the cube on which he sat, came a beautiful maiden who received him with a kiss of peace and open arms. He was then accepted by the Brotherhood and recognized as a Gnostic knight. Those were Gnostic Rosicrucians, who truly knew the mysteries of the rose and the cross. I do not mean to say that they were truly Rosicrucians. Rosicrucian is a higher term. Rosicrucians only exist up there, in the higher worlds. Down here, only aspirants to Rosicrucians exist. To belong to the true Rosicrucian order, one must be Gnostic. But, what is the Rosicrucian? Is it not, perhaps, the symbol of the divine logos? What is the cross? We already know that it is absolutely sexual. Do you know what needs to be done for the rose to bloom on that cross? Do you understand what it means, for the logos to bloom through sexual work in us? That is something very terrible, indescribable. Only when one reaches this point can we be Rosicrucians, Gnostic Rosicrucians. Before that moment, we can only be aspirants to Rosicrucians. No one could enter the Golden Rosicrucian order without being Gnostic, without the G of generation. How? In what way? If it is necessary for the rose to bloom, through sexual work, within us? What is the rose? We have already said it, the logos. But, for the logos to bloom in sex and through sex? Have you seen anything more terrible? A painting by Kungat, from the Middle Ages, is marvelous. In it, the crucified Christ appears. But, this is the greatness, with the erect phallus made of light. Only in this way is it possible to be a Gnostic Rosicrucian. In the Middle Ages, I repeat, those aspiring to be Rosicrucians were accepted in those Gnostic temples after that initiation. But, what exactly did that goat of Mendes mean? Obviously, to the Typhon Baphomet. I believe in the mystery of Baphomet, declares universal Gnosticism, and it is that Baphomet Lucifer is one of the isolated parts of our being. Our inner being has many particles, one of them is Lucifer, the reflection of the logos, the shadow of our own intimate logoi, projected within us and in ourselves, here and now, for our own good. There is the mystery of Baphomet and the Orab. The mystery of the Orab is so Gnostic that it is well worth remembering, undoubtedly, representing resurrection. But could resurrection be possible without Lucifer? Impossible, right? The Nahuatl knew this. The Nahuatl Lucifer, so loved in the temple of Chapultepec by the Gnostic Rosicrucians, Shalut, resides in each of us. That is the living and philosophical fire that lies deep within our seminal waters, in the profound depths of our sexual, metallic chaos. At the root of all this, could one work without Lucifer? Inri, say the Gnostics. That Inri is placed on the cross of the Savior of the world. But, where is that cross? I repeat again that the lingam yoni, phallus uterus, sexually connected, make a cross. Then the cross is carried by each of us, and we must work with the cross. Because there is the INRI, and INRI is Ignis Natura Renovator Integram. Fire renews nature incessantly. Thus, Nahuatl Lucifer, Shalut, the goat of Mendes, hidden in the depths of our seminal system, is that living and philosophical fire, through which we can radically transform ourselves. In the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, there is a very interesting statuette, the Raven. It looks towards a corner, and in that corner, there is a little stone. The stone of the center, they say, the cornerstone, the master stone, the devil. But how curious is that devil in the Notre Dame Cathedral. There all the faithful extinguish their candles after their rituals and prayers. Yes, that is the philosopher's stone, truly. The ancient Sibyls used to say, a true philosopher is one who knows how to prepare the vessel. But which vessel? Why, the vessel of Hermes Trismegistus. Where is that vessel? Here it appears in the pentagram. It is the sacred chalice, the chalice in which Christ drank during the Last Supper. Yes, it is the Holy Grail, over which there is so much chivalric literature. A copy of it is found in the Temple of Chapultepec, the same and legitimate one that shines in the Temple of Montserrat, Spain, Catalonia. That vessel of Hermes Trismegistus must be prepared. It is the vessel in which the raw material of the great work is contained. The vessel of Hermes, where the sacred sperm, the ens seminis, is contained. Woe to him who spills the vessel of Hermes, for then he falls like the inverted pentagram, with the upper angle down and the two lower rays up. He falls thus into the bottom of the abyss, and this is truly painful, my dear brothers. Let us continue now with the seal of Solomon, which also appears here, in this magical drawing of the pentagram, with the two linked triangles. It is obvious that to understand it, we need to be alchemists. How could we understand it without sacred alchemy? In what way? Transcendent events from my current reincarnation come to mind at this moment. I was still very young, and she was called Urania, the infinite. I was always in love with Urania, with that sky populated by countless galaxies, by whirlwinds of worlds that, like drops of gold, plunge into the endless abyss. One day, in a state of samadhi, I abandoned all my vehicles to immerse myself completely in the universal paraclete, beyond good and evil, far beyond the body, affections, and mind. In a state, we might say, of super-nirvanic happiness, blissful among that immaculate region of the universal spirit of life, I had to enter the doors of the temple. Then I opened the great book of nature and studied its laws. The ecstasy increased, from moment to moment. There is no greater joy than feeling the soul, detached, for the past and the future merge within an eternal now. When I returned from that samadhi, when I came back to this physical body, when I entered my vehicle through that pineal gland, so often cited by Descartes as the door of the soul, I had to receive an extraordinary visit. Certain adept ladies, emerging from that universal paraclete, became visible and tangible to me in the dense world of form. One of them, full of extraordinary sweetness, placed a ring with the seal of Solomon on the fourth finger of my right hand, exclaiming, "You have passed the trial of the sanctuary. Very few human beings have been able to pass that terrible trial." She blessed me and left, leaving my ring on the fourth finger of my right hand. I stood up quietly, and from that moment I felt blessed. Every time I managed to escape from this dense body, I would see the marvelous ring on my right hand, formed, yes, with that immaculate, whitest and divine substance from that region of the universal paraclete, where time does not exist. I lived through a series of transcendental and transcendent events. One of those mysterious nights, after finding myself in a garden full of sublime flowers, a living allegorical representation of divine virtues, I had the joy of entering a temple of beauty. Amid the aroma escaping from the censers, I floated with my sidereal vehicle, happy. The music of the spheres made the infinite cosmos vibrate, and each melody deeply moved me. Suddenly, stopping in front of the sacred altar, in front of the Mahatma of that divine place, in that corner of love, I looked at the ring. It was there, and touched it with my left hand, full of great curiosity. Then the Mahatma exclaimed, "That ring no longer serves you because you have touched it with the left hand. However, I will consult it." He then gave me certain explanations about it. He said, that ring vividly represents the logos of the solar system, that the sexual forces, masculine and feminine, work there, that the 6 points are masculine, and the 6 waves between the points are feminine. He explained that the 6 points and the 6 waves between the points form 12 radiations, and that the 12 radiations, through logoidal alchemy, come to crystallize in the 12 constellations of the zodiac, which is, for our solar system, a true cosmic matrix. The Mahatma then became silent and withdrew. Time passed, and I never saw my ring on the right hand again. I always inquired, always searched, always cried out for that ring. I listened to comments from various esotericists, but no one on the face of the earth could give me a satisfactory explanation. When would I conquer the marvelous ring again? Years passed, and at last, I understood. Friends, the upper triangle is the sulfur of secret philosophy, the living fire of the alchemists. The lower triangle, which links with the upper one, is Mercury. I had realized the great work, back in the continent of Mu, or Lemuria, which sank beneath the raging waves of the Pacific Ocean about 18 million years ago. At that time, I had achieved the complete integration of sulfur and mercury, had realized the philosopher's stone within myself. For this reason, the marvelous ring had been given to me. In those bygone times, I had passed the marvelous trial of the sanctuary. Yes, I had accomplished the great work, the one done by Nicholas Flamel, Raymundus Lullius, Jeshua ben Pandira, the Count Saint-Germain, the enigmatic Count Cagliostro, Quetzalcoatl, and many others. But it is true and undeniable that after accomplishing the great work, after passing the trial of the sanctuary, after studying the great book and unsealing its 7 seals, I made the mistake of touching it with the left hand, perhaps 1,000,000 years ago, give or take a little more. I do not say, perhaps, surely, it was 1,000,000 years ago. That is, after achieving the union of the 2 triangles, the integration of sulfur and mercury, I did this. I fell like the inverted pentagram, with the head down and the points up. I was already forbidden from sex, and I made the mistake of the Count Zenon Zanoni, returning to sex. If Count Zenon Zanoni fell in love with Viola, the great Neapolitan, I too made the mistake of falling in love with a beautiful maiden from the first sub-race of the 5th root race in the central plateau of Akka, now Asia. It was then that I lost the marvelous ring. It was then that the metallic reduction occurred in me, and so, like a fallen bodhisattva, I wandered from existence to existence until, in this present existence, I resolved to rise again to serve as an instrument of the Father, for He is the one who initiates the new age of Aquarius, amidst the august thunder of thought. There, that sulfur is the sacred fire that must be awakened to unseal the 7 seals of the Great Book of Wisdom, the Great Book of Nature. Is that book mentioned in the Apocalypse of the Seer of Patmos? It's true. When the first seal is unsealed, a great event occurs, and with the second and the third, and the 4th seal, and the 5th, and so on. But when the 7th seal is broken, there are thunderclaps, lightning, hail, and great earthquakes. Each one of us has the obligation to unseal the 7 seals of the Great Book through the sacred fire. In its elemental, residual form, we say that when the kundalini rises along the spine, the 7 seals are unsealed, but that's elementary, right? We say the first seal is unsealed when the Church of Ephesus opens, the coccygeal chakra, which gives us powers over the gnomes of the earth. And when the sacred fire rises to the level of the prostate, we say the second seal is unsealed, which gives us power over the waters of life. And when the sacred fire rises to the level of the solar plexus, we say the 3rd seal is unsealed, which gives us power over the fiery fire. And when it rises to the level of the heart, we say the 4th seal is unsealed, which gives us power over the creatures of the air. And when it rises to the level of the creative larynx, we say the fifth seal is unsealed, which gives us power over pure akasha and clairaudience. And when it reaches the level of the third eye, that marvelous lotus opens, allowing us to see the great realities of the higher worlds, then we say the sixth seal is unsealed. And the seventh seal, we say, is when the fire reaches the pineal gland, because we acquire polyvalency and many other faculties. But that's elementary, completely elementary. That's just the first work. Unsealing the seven seals in a masterly way is something much more terrible, much more terrible. Since this pertains to alchemy, I will at least give some notions about what is terrible. It is said, my dear brothers, in already alchemical language, that we must undergo 3 calcinations, and this is represented by the living symbol of the salamander. The first calcination belongs to the mountain of initiation. What do we calcine there? What is it that we are going to cook, recook, and cook again? The red salt, it has been said to us, which is nothing but petrified fire, petrified sulfur, because fire, in alchemy, is represented by sulfur. That red salt represents the inhuman elements we carry within, which must be reduced to ashes. That is the first calcination. The second is more elevated, belonging to the second mountain. We must calcine the ashes of that red salt again to extract various spiritual elements from it. This is quite interesting. Here we work with the spheres of the moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. The third calcination goes even further. We must return to that red salt, to the ashes that have remained, to gather them and recook them, to finally extract from it the metallic salt, incombustible and fleeting, that is, the deepest divine elements, which are bottled, normally, within the ego. Once extracted, they merge with the consciousness, so that it may shine, blazing, within the heart of the universe. Only after the third calcination does the rooster of passion sing, which represents the resurrection. This is why Christ said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." The first denial corresponds to the first calcination of alchemy, to the first cooking of the red salt, because we must descend into the infernal worlds, to work, obviously, for that is the palace of alchemy. It is said that we have denied Christ because in the infernal worlds we must work like demons, live like demons, but destroy our inhuman elements. With the second calcination, it is said that we have denied Christ for the second time, because we must return to the infernal worlds to work again, to continue disintegrating the deeply submerged psychological defects we carry within.